Right, so welcome back everyone to the Student Pages Spotlight series. I'm your host Jaden.
Hello, Izzy.
And today we have a very, very special episode for you guys, as you can tell from wherever you're watching, whether it be Instagram or online. This is a in-person episode, something very new for us. And today we have two incredible guests for you guys. We are here with Stephanie Hutchinson and Becky Lees. How are you guys doing?
We're good, thank you. Very well. Yeah. Very excited, and thank you very much for being here.
No, honestly, it is our absolute pleasure. So, yeah, guys, we are here at the LSO St. Luke's. This is just an incredible new space for making content. Honestly, it's absolutely fantastic. So, I want to ask you, Stephanie, with the new facilities at LSO St. Luke's, how do you think they're going to support the work of LSO Discovery?
That's a really good question, Jaden. And I think before I get into how it will really impact the program, I might just start by telling your listeners a little bit more about LSO Discovery, which was founded almost 40 years ago by our musicians themselves. So it didn't come from a government directive. It wasn't an initiative that emerged from anywhere else. It actually came from the players who would come into the Barbican to perform every night on stage. And there's one thing getting rapturous applause, which they do deservedly every night they perform. But they realized that there was something missing. They would pass people in the street. They'd see kids standing at the bus stop, or parents with their children in the park, and older people in supermarkets. And they thought, well, what does our music really have to do with the community in which we live and work? And this led to a conversation and a sort of commitment from the players that they wanted to create the program, which gave them the opportunity to make more meaningful connections with the public. And so Discovery was born. And over the years, it has evolved and grown. We now have a program that sees us working across the year, reaching over 60,000 people. We run over 1,000 events. We work with schools and young people. We work in the community. We're in hospitals where we start them young, and with toddlers right through to old people. We have a large emerging artist program for students at conservatoires, not just instrumentalists, but also composers. So there's something for every musician to be able to have an opportunity to share them parts of themselves and their skills with a huge wide range of people. And it's a huge privilege to be part of that program. And these new facilities enable us to do even more. So because we can now run activity concurrently in different spaces, and we'll get onto the amazing facilities in the digital suite. But for us, it's a game changer. We're able to reach more people, and we're able to expand the program and provide even more opportunities for young people, old people, the community in which we work. Not just about introducing them to music and sharing skills from our musicians, but now with the team here at LSO St. Luke's.
Yeah, I think it's just beautiful how really it's so community driven as an initiative. You know, it's like this really is opening doors for people that may not have had access to these kinds of spaces before. You know, I think that is something so important. I mean, was there any like particular personal run-ins you had that opened your eyes personally to why this work is so important?
Me personally? Well, I come from a long line of teachers in my family, and I guess it was Mr. Gray when I was 10, he put a flute in my hand that changed my sort of trajectory. And I guess being, having come from an education background and seeing the impact that live musicians or artists of any sort, because I've been very fortunate, I've worked with singers, with dancers, with actors, directors, designers. I studied music, I've come full circle, and I'm back in the heart of music in the LSO. It's absolutely wonderful. So I've had so many opportunities where I've witnessed the impact that an artist has on someone. And there was a moment when I first started the LSO, I went to one of the hospitals, and our musicians were going into the wards, and we were on a pediatric ward in intensive care. And the nurse held up this little boy who was 6 months old, and the players started performing, and our animateur was sort of softly singing, and he had tubes coming out of everywhere. His eyes never left the musicians. His eyes were gleaming, and you knew that something profound was taking place in that moment. Something you can't really describe. It's really hard. It's almost we talk about the magic of music, but it really, there is something there. And that's not something you can get performing on the concert stage. It takes a program like Discovery for those encounters to take place.
Of course, it's about it being personal, right? It's like that really is that is the magic of it, isn't it? It's the personality. So yeah, I mean, I'll hand over to Izzy to ask Becky a bit now that.
Yeah, so Becky, as the director of LSO Live, what was the vision behind the new recording facilities, and what do you believe makes them unique?
Well, as Stephanie has just so beautifully put, we don't see it just as a venue, but I think for the LSO, as much as the performances on stage, we are very much a kind of a recording orchestra. We are the most recorded orchestra in the world, and it's very much part of our legacy. We were the first ever recording session in Abbey Road back in the 1900s with Edward Elgar. So for us, we've always seen that there's a real kind of connection with recordings and the wider brand, really, of the LSO. But for us, we really wanted to make that investment really about the next generation of music making and media making as well. We wanted this space to be a real kind of creative engine, and I think that's what the upgrades have really offered us. And I think what makes it unique is this space. There's so much heritage here, but it's also a space for innovation. So we hope that the kind of the production environment and for how the kind of content can be made is going to be really quite inspiring for any kind of creators coming through the space.
Yeah, and so with, as you mentioned, Abbey Road, that is one thing that I wanted to ask you about as well. With the studio and the equipment here kind of being built up to that standard and bringing that standard to LSO. So why do you think it's so important to have that standard and to set that bar to keep driving more people to feel inspired by it?
I mean, there is a very real need for more studios in London and I think within the wider UK as well. So we kind of recognise that if we were going to make that investment, it needed to be of that kind of world-class facility. But there is certainly within the music industry, we feel that there is sufficient demand and need for those kind of studio spaces.
Yes, and I'll ask back over to you, Jaden.
Thank you very much. Right, Stephanie. So I think something really important to both me and Izzy, obviously, us being working student pages, and the fact that I'm a recent graduate. Izzy's just. Have you graduated? When did you graduate?
Well, I'm not graduated yet. It's in November. But
Okay.
finish university in May.
Right. You know what? I knew something along those lines. I should know better. It's like,
You've only known me how long?
Yeah, I know. I'm a terrible friend, really. But no, the case in point is, we're both very fresh to the whole student scene and stuff. And, I think it's a very similar overlap with students and aspiring musicians, basically anyone new to creative spaces. I think hands-on experience is something we don't get very often. It's very difficult to, search it out in the first place, but also those opportunities don't exist, for a large majority of people. So what new opportunities do you think these spaces will provide to that group of people? Recent students, aspiring musicians, perhaps people who don't have the most money in the world. It's like, what can we offer to those people through these spaces?
Well, I think that traditionally Discovery has been focused on orchestral instrumental coaching, tuition, opening up the world of orchestral music. And this is a whole new strand of work for us that we're able to develop. And there's so many young people who might never have played a musical instrument, but would be able to work in the performing arts behind the scenes, whether that's through production or the technical side of putting on live orchestral music. There's so many jobs out there, so many skills that they could acquire. And there aren't the places where they can necessarily do that. But at LSO St. Luke's, they will have that opportunity. So that's something completely new and different that we'll be developing here in this building. And to have the opportunity, again, to work with professionals in a really professional environment is something that young people are going to be able to thrive in that situation. So we're planning to roll out a whole new area and scheme of work around the production and technical side of putting on live orchestral music concerts. Also, given what Becky was saying about with the film and our history, so being able to explore composition and recording and audio engineering and how that is disseminated through like podcasts or through other digital forms of media is, again, an incredible opportunity that young people who might never have had that opportunity before will now be able to take part.
Yeah, and I think it's wonderful that you guys have this thorough, deep understanding that the creative industry and creative endeavors don't necessarily always go in, one streamlined way. It's like everything connects to each other. And I think, that's something really unique about LSO. And I think that's something that I really admire about this is that, it started very much in one, sort of category, if you will, like you mentioned. But now the expansion's happening, so it's like, do you see it continuing to expand into maybe other creative areas as well? Like what direction do you see things going in the future?
Well, I think the sky's the limit now with wonderful facilities, which Becky can speak to in more detail, because it's a game changer in terms of what we can do. And thinking about how technology is advancing even as we're speaking, and the digital capacity, and what we're seeing with AI, there's always going to be a need for live interaction, and how we just disseminate that, and how we consume culture, and how we listen to music. And so this building is going to be able to give us the opportunities to really explore that, and provide opportunities for young people to access it in ways that we might not even imagine right now. So it's an ever evolving industry, and I think that's what makes it so exciting. But the need for communicating through music, human to human, that will never change. And how we do that, and how we help people access that's what is critical, and that's what's at the heart of this building.
And I think it's beautiful that you guys have such a focus on the humanity of it all, because again, you mentioned AI. It's such a powerful, incredible tool, but equally it's so terrifying in the stages that it is, where it's sort of this unknown area at the moment. We understand more about it as time goes on, but it's terrifying. And I saw something recently about, like, I think a guy said, some of us don't have the creative ability, and we need AI because we don't have any ideas. And I think, well, that's impossible. Nobody doesn't have any ideas. It's like nobody doesn't have the capacity. So no, I just, like I say, I think it's wonderful that is the primary objective of all this. So yeah, Izzy, I'll throw things back to you.
Well, while we're on the topic of technology, I wanted to ask you, Becky, because the new audio control room is equipped with Dolby Atmos technology. How does this change what's possible creatively for artists and producers?
I do think it is quite a game changer. It definitely has been for us from that kind of creative aspect. I mean, we were really excited about 5.1 and that impact that had on that kind of surround experience. But Dolby Atmos does take it to that next level, and it really does give you that immersive feeling, and that kind of that sense of what does it feel like for somebody to be in the room. It really is that kind of dynamic. And we were very fortunate. We've tested it out with a couple of the conductors, and they were kind of a little bit skeptical to start with, and then we sit them in that space, and they're sat there centrally, and they're thinking, oh my goodness, even for them it sounds quite different, and they get the sense that that's almost what the composer might have been feeling and have the soundscape in their head. So it really is a very kind of inspiring kind of piece of technology. And so I think, it just gives that kind of different sense of the kind of creative palette.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I mean, kind of bouncing off of what you said earlier, Stephanie, about the magic of music, if you will, do you feel like this standard of technology and the standard of your equipment helps to, as you kind of just mentioned, bring that to life and really immerse people within this creative process?
Yeah, I think it does elevate it. And a bit like you were saying as well, no, I think for us, no, we don't really, it's still quite a new technology. So I think it probably will mean that it does have a bit of an impact on potentially how composers kind of see music as well, and recognize, the potential of what that looks like in a kind of recorded kind of entity.
Yeah, definitely. So I'll pass back over to you, Jaden.
Thank you very much, Jeeves. Okay. So, I think we are headed, like I mentioned, we're sort of headed into a new generation of creatives now. It's like things are changing ever so rapidly. And so I think, again, we're at a time where there's sort of this mix between endless opportunity, but also somewhat a limited opportunity, depending on, there's a lot that it depends on, right? But I think, so for this studio and this project overall, how do you think this is going to help to elevate and inspire the next generation of creatives?
I think, apart from the technical capability, for me, it all comes down to human interaction as well. And I think that's what makes Discovery such an amazing program, is not the program, but it's the people. And it comes back to our musicians. And we talk about a spirit of the LSO. And our chief conductor, Sir Antonio Papano, talks about the orchestra as having a heart of a lion, so incredibly courageous, a speed of work, they will pick up anything and just devour it, emotional intelligence, and immense generosity. And it's that generosity of player that they bring that permeates the whole entire organization. And that generosity extends to LSO St. Luke's. The staff here have immense generosity. There is no task too tall for them to tackle. There is no project that we can't do together. And this is a case in point, the fact that this whole redevelopment was such a success, and now we've got this incredible new spaces for the digital hub. So to have opportunities to work alongside world-class technicians, world-class filmmakers, world-class audio engineers, people with immense knowledge, that is going to have a huge impact on a young person or any person's life, really, in the same way that the musicians have an enormous impact working alongside young instrumentalists. So I think that whole excellence and standards and quality that comes with the LSO and comes with LSO St. Luke's is going to be incredibly inspiring for young creatives, because there's nothing quite like working with the very best in the world.
Of course. No, I mean, how could there be? And I mean, I think it's interesting as well. This is totally unrelated to anything I'm asking here, but I'm just genuinely curious. How does it feel to you just to sit and listen to them perform? Serious. I mean, that's got to be, I mean, this kind of goes out to both of you. It's like, how must that feel? That's got to be magical, given that, you can think to yourself, not only is this beautiful, incredible to witness, we played such a big part in, this coming together. How does that feel?
It's pretty awe-inspiring, Jake.
Yeah.
And I think what also gives me such joy is, we put on 19 concerts every year, 16 for schools, 3 for families. We had 1 last Sunday, and we had 6 concerts for schools last week. When you see 2,000 kids in an auditorium on their feet, moving to the music, singing along to the music, and the LSOs, like the sound they produce is just next level.
Yeah.
And we're doing Tristan and Isolde this week. It's like my favorite opera, and I just cannot wait. And in a way, if there's any downside, it's they spoil you forever, because then you can't listen to anyone else without going, no, it's just not quite good enough.
Spotify subscription must be wasted on you guys.
That's why they're so important.
They are, but it is totally awe-inspiring, and you do, and there's real charisma from the conductors as well. There is definitely a sense of kind of rock stardom with some of them, and I think whenever I take a colleague who maybe hasn't seen a symphonic concert before, I'm always kind of, well, they go, yeah, it is like, no, there is a real sense of energy in the room, and it's very special. Yeah.
No, it doesn't surprise me to hear, but honestly, it's beautiful to hear you guys' perspective. It's like, it's something so incredible. So,
and I think we've seen definitely, I've worked at the LSO for a very long time, just the change in audience as well, coming through the Barbican, and that's so exciting. And I think there's a real energy and enthusiasm for the orchestra, and that's really kind of meaningful as well.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, you could be anyone and still think it's incredible, right? It's like, yeah. But no, Izzy, I'll pass it back to you.
And I think that electricity and that passion is something that kind of leads me on nicely to this question of, how do you see the facilities being used by musicians and creators working beyond classical music? Because as you mentioned, there is this kind of rock and roll atmosphere of the passion and the electricity of not just the conductor, not just the performers, but everyone in the room.
I mean, we definitely see there's more and more kind of a blurring and blending of genres. We can just see it from the kind of the work that we do, but I would hope that can also be quite inspirational and kind of gives a bit of flexibility and freedom to the creators that come into the space as well. I think just that kind of freedom to kind of experiment in these spaces, I think, is something that we really want to encourage, and hopefully will be kind of inspiring for that next generation.
And I feel like you've both spoken so highly of these experiences that you've had, and going off of what we've just talked about of other musicians and creators coming into this space. So is there any advice that you would both have potentially to give to someone who is trying to make it into this sort of industry or wants to be a part of something like this? Is there anything in particular that you feel like would advise people to do to kind of get the way into this kind of incredible environment?
Good question. If you've got something, I will, yeah.
Don't be shy. Be prepared to knock on doors, because most people answer them. And so don't hold back, and don't be discouraged when you get setbacks, because that's life. We all experience setbacks. We all, have that horrible feeling where you then start to question yourself that you're not good enough or whatever. But like anything to do with the arts, you have to have an inner fire to fuels you, to make you power on. Because if you don't believe in yourself, if you don't believe that is absolutely 100% what you need to be doing, that it's like eating for you or drinking water, you can't live without it, you can't exist without it, then maybe it's not the industry for you. But if you believe in yourself and this is absolutely what you want to do, then you just have to go for it. You just walk off the street and you start banging on doors until someone opens them. They will.
And I feel like that's such transferable advice as well, because I feel like that probably fits to so many walks of life as well. So people will probably appreciate that advice in more ways than one. But I do feel like even the way that you guys speak about this is you can feel the electricity and the passion that is built within this community, and it's really something special.
Yeah. And I definitely think within the music industry, you've got to be open-minded as well, and don't feel that don't pigeonhole yourself, I think, as well. I think if you can be quite transferable in the way that you kind of make music, I think that obviously it also widens those doors for you as well. And it is a small industry, so I think just always be really kind of respectful of the people that you work with, because you just don't know kind of where they kind of where they will end up later in your career as well. I think be nice. Yes, it does go a long way.
Yeah, no, I want to. In fact, I'm going to look into both cameras for this one. Right, the whole knocking on doors thing. That is not an invitation to go and literally knock on people's doors. You will get a restraining order. Do not do that. Right, just legal matter there. Okay. No, but seriously, we've discussed this a lot, Stephanie. It's like it's obviously very important for young people to have access to equipment, but ultimately, you see a lot of young creatives now using what they have at their disposal. So, all mobile phones have a camera, microphone, that kind of thing. It's like, I know I started my own content when I was like 11 through like my computers back home and stuff like that. But when we look at actual equipment, top standard microphones, top standard recording equipment, why do you think that's especially important for young people to have access to compared to what they have at home?
Well, it's all about, access to excellence, getting back to the very DNA of the orchestra. If you're given the tools, which are absolutely top notch, and you might have started in your bedroom with your phone or whatever it is, at some point you graduate to, the grown-up stuff, and to have that opportunity to work with the very best people with the very best equipment is incredibly inspiring for a young person. I'm always in awe. That's not to denigrate any, sort of home.
Oh no, it was terrible.
But I'm always in awe when I see, young artists in their bedrooms and the songs they write with, this little keyboard like this big. Sometimes financial constraints, it releases the most creativity. But I've never driven a Ferrari, but again, going back to Sir Antonio Pappano, he talks about the orchestra as like driving a Ferrari. So if you're graduating from, well, I'm from Australia, we have Toyotas at the sort of bog standard car, and then you get behind the wheel of a Ferrari. Can you imagine what that must feel like? And that's an analogy to give you an example of the sort of state-of-the-art facilities that we have here now. And it's all about raising aspirations. If the young person thinks that they can have access, which they will, to this, the sky is the limit for their imagination and what they're able to create. I can't think of anything more exciting for them.
No, of course. I mean, it's exciting. I mean, this is really top of the line stuff. Like you say, you can't go any better than the best. But ultimately, it's like, I think just having any kind of upgrade in equipment is always exciting for young creatives. Thank you, Gareth. That happened. That happened for me and Izzy today. It was incredible. And again, I think it really is the fact that, and I want to know your opinion on this actually, in that it incentivizes you to create when you have better tools at your disposal, right? In that, you can be brilliant, you can have incredible ideas, you can want to create, but ultimately, if you don't have all the right tools at your disposal, you're going to find yourself hitting walls eventually. It might work for a certain amount of time, but when you want to get bigger, when you want to get better as time goes on, that wall can be frustrating. So do you think that this is really just the ability to tear that wall down and say, guys, look, this is here for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah? And because some, people might not know or understand the extent of the capability of the technology, to be shown and guided and mentored by staff to open up a whole new world of how they can express themselves, that in ways they may never have thought of. Like that's incredibly exciting for them, and an amazing opportunity that only this sort of equipment and building and the facilities can provide.
No, of course. I mean, it's exciting for us, and this is, early days, isn't it? It's like we were ecstatic about this. It's such an incredible opportunity just to be here doing this. So the fact that really what we're doing is using the equipment to promote the equipment.
Yeah.
It's like it only takes one moment to go, what could actually be achieved here? It really is so exciting.
You guys are part of the legacy.
I know, right? We're going to be able to say it's like we were here. But with that, Izzy, take it away.
Well, I feel like everything that you've just said is perfectly encapsulating of all the ways in which having the best equipment and stuff can elevate a person's performance. But I wanted to ask you, Becky, if there was any specific opportunities that you feel like the new studios can create for young people specifically who are interested in careers in music production or audio engineering, content creation, anything that you feel like specifically it can elevate for them.
I think, as Stephanie's already said, I feel very similar, that kind of this kind of emerging, next generation are so entrepreneurial, so incredibly talented, and kind of some of the user-generated content, is all of those kind of things I think are really inspiring. But this space then will kind of elevate that, and I think we think very naturally at the LSO about collaboration, and I think that's something that we would bring as well amongst the staff team. So ensuring that there were kind of the skill sets were kind of upgraded, the possibilities for the kind of distribution pathways as well. I think it's great to be kind of a self-releaser, but there are definitely limitations to that. So I think that's some of the kind of expertise that we could bring, as well as the kind of production and technical side of things.
And I'm curious to ask as well, because obviously we are asking questions and promoting this to how it might help young people, and I've already asked you what your advice might be for someone in that position, but just from a curious point of view, how did you guys end up getting into the position that you're in now, and how did you end up becoming such a big part of this community?
I was somebody who actually didn't grow up in a city. So for me, the only way I could really kind of listen to the kind of world-class kind of orchestras and the like was through recording. So it's definitely always been something that I was very conscious about, the power that a kind of an album can have. So I did study music, but I started in a very kind of junior position at an independent record label. And for me, I found that was such a kind of important kind of learning piece. And that's where I think just naturally, if you work in it, we're a relatively small kind of arts organisation actually, and so we are always able to be quite agile in the way that we work, and we definitely, I think, very supportive for the kind of younger members of our team, and I think that's something that then naturally kind of is reflected in the way that we kind of run our projects as well. So for me, I've always understood the kind of value of recordings.
So I came from Sydney, and I was very lucky that I just went to a little primary school, but they believed in music, and they offered instrument learning to many of the students, and I was lucky I was chosen to be one of them. But it wasn't until I was 15, and my mum was always very keen for us. She always was listening to music. She was always playing, and I think she recognized that I also had this great love for it. And I think I got to miss school, and she took me to see the opera. And I remember just going, oh my God, like that was it. I was completely immersed in this whole different world. I'd never heard a live orchestra before, or singers, or, or the whole production and the costumes and the lighting. And I was just completely blown away. And I was like, okay, I need to do this. And I remember when I was 17, I walked in off the street because I happened to walk past where Opera Australia, as it was called then, had their office. And I walked in. I said to the lady at the reception, I said, I'd like to speak to your personnel manager, please. They said, you are knocking on doors. That's why I said it. And they said, oh, we don't have one. And I went, oh. And she goes, well, what do you, why? Why do you want to? I said, because I want to work here. I want a job. I'd like to work here, please. But she said, well, what do you do? I said, what do you mean? She said, well, are you a seamstress or are you a singer? I said, oh, I'm a student. And she said, well, I'll get our education officer, which was a brand new role this woman had just started. And she walked out and I said, I really want to come work here and opera's my passion and please, I'll do anything. I'll work for free. And she said, why don't we just have a coffee? And she took this hysterical time. And I did. I worked for free. I worked over the summer and it's sweltering heat. We've had sweltering heat here last week. That ain't nothing where I got from. And I would traipse in and I worked for free. And that led to a job 1 day a week. And that's how I got into it. And then I always wanted to come to London because it's the epicenter for culture and music and opera and everything. And I've just had the most incredible opportunities, very, very fortunate. But it does take a little bit of chutzpah. And I've been very, very grateful and very grateful to London and all the opportunities that it's afforded me. It's an amazing city. And to work for an organization like the London Symphony Orchestra, oh, that's I had to pinch myself when I think about that girl that walked off the street that, now here I am. It is, life's amazing. So grab every opportunity, kids.
Yeah. And yeah, definitely don't be afraid of those, you might think, oh, I'm in a junior position. Everyone has been there and you genuinely do learn so much from those positions and just bide your time because you're absorbing hopefully everything that you're kind of seeing around you. And you might disagree with the kind of seniors, but at some point you could be that person and you can make those changes if you're making it wrong. But yeah, it's a really kind of valuable thing.
Yeah, you're totally right. I mean, it's funny you mention that actually because most jobs I've gotten, I try and apply for like a retail job and say, look, I've got all these skills. I'm out the door in 2 seconds. It's like, no, we're all right. But, any creative job, they say, right, what do you want to do? And I go, I don't really want to know what I do. But here's what I've done. They're always like, I'll give you a shot. It's like, it's beautiful. Yeah. I think as well, it's important to note, and again, this has nothing to do with what I'm asking here, but it's just because I genuinely have a passion for it, right? I think it's beautiful that orchestral music is so timeless. So I think it's a very small amount of people, but I've definitely run into people who think that orchestral music's outdated now. It's like, oh, we've moved on to blank or whatever. People don't realize it's like, oh my goodness, it's so transferable that, the orchestra. So, I'll get emotional while you guys were talking there because I had a flashback to my childhood in that there was this game called Super Mario Galaxy that I played with my dad. And the music in that game is incredible. Seriously, it's by this guy Koji Kondo. It's incredible. And there was this orchestral symphony that did the music and honestly, I just remember listening to that, and I was moved in a way that I genuinely don't think I've been since or before. Music can touch you in a way that I just don't think other mediums can, and especially when you've seen it live, especially when you've got so many people working on it in front of you. It's crazy, right? It's absolutely like nothing else, so I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm very envious. It's like it's like
it's so true. You don't necessarily need to have been to a concert, but you listen to a film and the impact that soundtrack has, or as you say, video games, it's incredibly impactful. And I think there's people like Ray who are actually incorporating kind of symphonic music into her album. So I think there's still definitely interest in use and
people
and that tugs at the heartstrings.
Oh, absolutely. You don't need vocals sometimes because again, for me at least in that instance, it was just a case of it's one of those things that takes you back to those moments. It's like absolutely nothing can compare to an experience like that. But so looking ahead, are there any new projects or programs or facilities that are going to be made possible for LSO Discovery to take advantage of in the future, do you guys think?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
I mean, I think I mentioned earlier that, to date, the focus of our programs has been around live orchestral music, instrumental work, composing, and to have now the opportunity where we can strip back and provide opportunities to explore the production and the technical side of what it means to put on live music, whether that's orchestral, whether that's pop, whether that's jazz. The principles are the same. So if you come here and you learn those skills, they are completely transferable. So that's what I mean when I say it's a game changer. It's going to open up a whole new way for us to be able to engage with new people and people who thought perhaps that classical music isn't for them, like you touched on that, Jaden. This is about music. This is about transmitting those moments that you don't need speech for, to a wide audience, whether that's through a film, whether that's on a recording. And you don't need to be envious because it's right there for you. It's, and the LSO is for everyone. And this building is a home to everyone. So, and you just have to knock on the door.
Yeah, I need to warm up to that, honestly. It's like that. Might be a me thing. It might be a terrible memory from. I definitely have had a few doors slammed in my face, but that might just be my face, But no, as I say, yeah, you're so right about just the opportunities this provides and the way it's going to open people's eyes. I mean, honestly, you mentioned soundtrack music. I wouldn't have even known I enjoyed listening to soundtrack music if I hadn't just randomly stuck the Gremlins 2 soundtrack on. Do you have any idea how good the music?
I don't know if I've.
Oh my goodness, Jerry Goldsmith is an absolute genius. Seriously, I mean that.
What is it with you and Gremlins?
Right, film wouldn't be as good if it weren't for the soundtrack. I'm just putting that out there. Anyway, I'll throw things back to you so you can get back on course. You know me, I go off on a tangent and I never stop.
We've somehow ended up at Gremlins.
Well, I wouldn't be. It's me we're talking about.
Suddenly the streaming numbers of Gremlins 2 go up the second you mentioned it.
Well, I wanted to kind of circle back to what you said before about Ray as an example specifically, and talk about, well, as recording and immersive audio continues to evolve, how do these new facilities at LSO position the future? Because I feel like Ray was a really great example of how orchestral sound is being blended with modern music or like contemporary music. But is there any ways that you believe that these facilities can continue to expand that, and just what you believe it has in store for the future?
I mean, I think the opportunity to create more kind of media in whatever form that is, whether that's audio through a podcast or through the kind of the video facilities we have, that's just going to open up via online really the work that we're doing here, and hopefully people are going to be intrigued and they give those opportunities for those new creators as well, but then actually experience it in performance as well, in person. I hope hopefully it will be that kind of full 360 result really. I think that's what's really exciting, but it's just we're all very conscious of the kind of competition through phones and things like that, but actually experiencing music in person is incredibly impactful, as we've kind of already touched on. So to be able to do that, the two hand in hand is really kind of the ambition.
Definitely. And unless you had anything to add, that was my final question. But I just want to say how much of a pleasure it's been speaking with both today, and how much of an honour it is for us to be here. It's been such an incredible opportunity, and thank you to everyone at home that stuck around to be a part of this incredible moment. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you as well.
Yeah, do appreciate it, guys. It's been absolutely incredible. But I'll mirror what Izzy was saying. Thank you, and goodbye.